Terrific. John, I saw you holding the baton there. And before I turn this, ask you some questions, I just want to reiterate, everybody please stay muted throughout the entire session. We're targeting 45 minutes to an hour. We're going to try and have everybody closed out by 6 o'clock. And if you have any questions, put them in the chat. I'll be monitoring the chats. If you have any questions of any of us that are talking here today, just put them in the chat and we'll look at them. So everybody's bio, the invitation you received has a short bio on everybody. So I'm not really going to go through all of that, but I'm going to introduce John Mario, the music director and conductor of the Coachella Valley Symphony. And so John, can you tell me, give me a brief history of the symphony and how you got involved?
Yeah, I was just trying to unmute myself.
Oh, there you go.
How's it going, everybody? I see lots of, I see a good thing where they're all muted because there are a lot of troublemakers out there. I can see them all in the little boxes there. It's like Hollywood Squares, but no Paul Lynn.
That's me.
Oh, that's you. Okay. Can you say silly savages?
After a couple of drinks, I could.
Okay. You want me to give the whole history of the symphony?
Well, just be brief if you can, and then how you got involved, how you got connected.
Okay. Well, I moved to California about 6-7 years ago, and through somebody in the symphony, I found out that there was an audition, and I drove through the back way, came down the hill, and almost died, and made it to the interview, and they had about 4 different candidates at the time, and I got to do 2 concerts with the symphony. I think this was about 2012, 2013 or so, and was fortunate enough to be chosen as music director. This is I don't even know what year it is now because we kind of took a year off. It's my 4th or 5th year. I can't. Lisa will be able to fill in all the details after I am done raving. She'll be able. She's like the fact checker of the organization.
He's referring to Lisa Lindley, who's
the in case you're wondering, the piece we just heard was the intermezzo from Cavalleria Rusticana by Mascagni. He was a one-hit wonder at the turn of the century. He wrote the piece, he wrote the opera for a competition. It was a 1-act competition, and he won, and it was his most famous opera.
And so I'm just curious about the orchestra or the symphony itself. How many musicians do you have on the stage? Where do they come from?
How many play?
Yeah.
About half.
Well, no, how many are on stage performing when you have a full orchestra? How many are on the stage?
We go from we go from about 50 to, it depends on the concert, but we average around 50, between 50 and 60. Sometimes we get up higher. Depends on the piece. We probably have a lot more, many more than that, because people rotate in and out of the symphony. Also, it's kind of a snowbird orchestra too, so we have a lot of people who come from other places, and they winter in the desert, and they come and play with us. People from all walks of life. Some people are musicians, some teachers, do all different kinds of things, and they come and we rehearse on Monday nights. We do about 5 concerts a season. And we also have a youth symphony besides the adult symphony.
Yeah. And how large is that youth symphony? How many students?
You'll have to ask James for that.
Okay.
I mean, to me, they just look like a mass of human beings.
All right. Well, James, let's hold off on that one. It's your segment. Okay. I'll ask you the symphony questions. And so John, I'm sure everybody's curious. We've had this horrible year and whatnot, and everybody's curious on when are things going to open up. So just from your perspective, what you can tell us, what does the rest of this year in 2022 look like?
Well, apparently we are now getting dates from the Annenberg. So things are looking up with that. So there has been some talk. Nothing firm yet, but things are going in the right direction so far.
So that's where you'll be performing at the Annenberg, the Art Museum Annenberg.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And again, more all of those types of firm details. We have Lisa in the house, so we can ask her those questions.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe we will do that. Well, Lisa, be prepared for a little segment
See,
of
he's
yours.
ready to get rid of me already.
Unrehearsed segment.
No, so
Uh, and
that's
then
it.
just one last question before we move on, John. I noticed in your bio and just reading about you, you've done extensive touring, and in some cases with young performers and whatnot. Could you tell us about some of your touring experiences and what's
Okay,
come out of
well,
that?
I lived in New York City for a long time. Was an opera coach. I was the Italian coach at New York City Opera. I coached a lot of singers who sang, just as a private coach. But I started off in opera, so I was conducting opera, mainly regional companies around. And in around 2010 or so, I was on the Jackie Vanco tour, so I got to conduct every major orchestra in the country on tour with her. She was about
Wow.
10 years old at the time, and I did that tour for about 3 years. And in fact, one of the stops was in Indio, and I met a lot of the people in the Coachella Valley Symphony at that time. So we can circle back to your first question, which was how did I get involved with the symphony? Well, mainly because I knew people from before when I had conducted them. A lot of our players played in a Jackie Vanco orchestra some time back.
Huh. Huh. Well, so just given your broad experience, I mean, opera and touring and now here, and with kids, and we have a number of students I see on here. If you were to like give some words of wisdom to somebody young that's contemplating maybe a career or just even getting involved with Buddy Rogers, what words of wisdom would you have for somebody that's thinking about
Run. No, no, really. I mean, in all honesty, you talk about if you want to talk about somebody being a soloist, right? How many people out of all people in conservatories have a job that pays full time in music? Very few, right? Your odds in New York of becoming an opera singer, it's greater to be hit by the subway than to become a famous opera singer, and then people pursue it, right? So what my advice to people would be, do not pursue this unless you have, number one, a financial backup job, and number two, you must do it more than breathing. You have that kind of passion, because it is so competitive to get and to get to the top in the business.
Huh. Well, I think that's good. We've heard that from others too. The passion has to be there. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, startup companies, and that's kind of the thing I tell them too. If you don't have the passion, stay home. Don't
Well,
bother.
people can have the gift for it, and they have to have the diligence. And besides having the diligence, they have, the people who make it in music, they've spent their whole 20s practicing 8 hours a day. And you can do all of those things and end up with nothing, with zero. You have to be willing to take that risk.
Yeah. And I'm sure everybody has ups and downs and they probably want to throw in the towel, but a select few keep on going, right?
Well, yeah, and there are rewards. I mean, there are days when you will feel absolutely blessed being an artist or musician.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, good. All right. Stay with us. Don't go anywhere. But James, you have another clip for us?
Yes, I mean, that would be a good way to introduce me. I should probably introduce the piece.
Oh, well, okay.
otherwise
Yeah,
we
okay.
might-
Okay. Introduce yourself, James.
I
I've been
mean,
referring to
'cause-
James here. He's
yeah,
our technical director here. But he's also the youth music director and conductor
Yes.
for the symphony.
Yes, I guess we can watch the clip. I usually, as a percussionist, if you've read the bio, I'm a percussionist. As a percussionist, I usually like to talk before people listen to the pieces I play. Otherwise, I lose audience really fast.
Okay.
In it. So the piece I'm going to share is I recorded it in October at the San Diego Museum of Art. It is a piece for solo marimba. Speaking of soloists, which I'm sure we'll talk more about, and this piece written in 1986 called "Reflections on the Nature of Water." Now, essentially, percussion music. We won't go into it because I'm not going to bore you with that. But a lot of the repertoire came late because orchestra music was written, percussion music, excuse me, was written at a different time, and it required a lot of different things in society to happen. So pretty much, this is essentially the Debussy, Ravel, Monet equivalent of impressionist percussion music. So each of the movements of the piece there's 6 small movements. We are hearing 2 of them. They're each about kind of imagined the different state of water. Right, there's movements called crystalline, which is like ice, and there's movements that are gently swelling like a river. What we're going to hear is a movement called fleet, which is running, I would imagine running water, and then relentless, as we know the ocean can be. So we're going to hear two short movements of Jacob Druckmann's reflections on the nature of water, and I'll get the screen shared.
James, that was absolutely terrific. I've got to tell you, when I go to Walt Disney Concert Hall, um, I often, actually more often than not, I sit in what's called orchestra view, which is behind the orchestra, underneath the organ, mainly to watch the percussion section.
Yeah.
Because you can't really see the percussion section if you're sitting out in the expensive seats, if I would call them that. And I just love, watching percussionists, and that was really terrific. Was there any significance to that music, the composer, or why did you pick those selections?
Well, that was recorded for an event. If you saw, I was wearing a themed mask. It was Art of Alon is a chamber music association in San Diego, and I'm actually their like resident marimba player. Essentially, they're based out of all the San Diego Symphony players. But usually, what happened a few years ago is they wanted to do a marimba piece with marimba and chamber music, and the orchestra percussionists were too busy with other things, and none of them wanted to learn anything. So I kind of got the call through the grapevine saying, "Hey, this piece is really hard. Can you learn all these notes and do this?" And I said, "Sure." And then it became a thing where I would just get called to play their marimba music because I've specialized in that instrument for a little while in my life. So I had my own instrument. It was one of those things. It's who you know and the circumstance you're in, and then it leads to multiple collaborations down the road, and it becomes a thing. So they programmed the piece, and it just happens to be one of the better pieces, I think, in my opinion, for the instrument. And the space was really wonderful. It was very resonant, and it worked really well.
Yeah. And that was done in, what museum was that done in?
San Diego Museum of Art.
Yeah, and Salon does that. They perform in museums. Isn't that what they do? Yeah.
Yeah, and then different, satellite places, things like that.
Terrific organization in San Diego. Yeah. So when you were growing up, were you always in the percussion and instruments, or did you play other instruments, or how did you come to become a percussionist?
Well, I mean, the short answer is when I was in 5th grade, we got to choose a band instrument, and I really wanted to play the French horn because it looked cool, but they didn't have any, so they threw me a drum pad and some sticks and said, "Here you go." So that's kind of how it started. But then in middle school, because I played piano, my parents gave me lessons when I was like really young. The story, I hate to tell the story because I feel like I tell it all the time, but when I was like 4 or 5, I was like plunking out Star Wars with the VHS tape because the piano was next to the TV, and I wanted to and so they were like, "Okay, we have to do this." And then I took piano for a while, and then kind of lost interest in it I wanted to play jazz, but my teacher didn't want me to play Mozart, which now I get it now. But so then I was able to read pitches, and then in middle school percussion sections, it's quite rare, at least at the time, given the district I was in. Most kids just play drums, right? And they want to play drums, but I could play the mallet parts, so then I kept getting all the mallet parts, and then that kind of fed the marimba specialty later in my life. So it's kind of all happenstance again.
Yeah, well, that's good information to anybody young here, that you may start out in one path and wind up in another path. And I think that quite often happens.
That is very true. I know a lot of percussionists, and I know we're not supposed to talk too much about percussion, but I know a lot of percussionists who made their careers being the person that could do the thing that other people couldn't, right? So actually some of the LA players are very much like that. So you got to find your niche and follow it. Yeah. And the thing that you like to do as well. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the Youth Symphony. How does somebody get into it? How large is it? What are the commitments and stuff like that?
Well, I have to say right now it's a little different, of course. But normally we do have auditions every year for placement. But things are going to be a little different when we start again, because right around the time I started as youth music director, we expanded, and I believe, and again, this is another thing to go to Lisa Lindley with, but the exact details, right? You can herd the cats in with the actual details later. But there was a grant, or there was some sort of ability for the symphony to purchase instruments, violins and cellos, to be rented to students. So then we were actually able to rent out instruments to students that might not have instruments at home or the ability to buy their own. And in doing that, we immediately rented all of them out because there was so much interest, and started a beginning strings group. So there are actually 2 youth symphony groups right now, and one of them is for these players that are just brand new, just never played before, and that is led by another one of our violinists in the orchestra, Jason Powell. And then there's the Youth Symphony, which I direct, which also has a woodwind section. So it's kind of like fluctuating numbers because we get new people all the time, and yeah, so it's like that's, and normally I imagine when we come back we will be having auditions. I actually joined in the middle of a season, so I've never done auditions myself. So I think we're going to get to reinvent the wheel a little bit with how we're going to do that. But it is an audition group. But also, if there's interest, we can find a place for you. And since we have 2 groups now, there are ways around. If students want to play music, they can play music with us.
And what venue? Where do you perform? Where does the symphony perform?
We rehearse in the same place as the Coachella Valley, and under my baton, I guess, I'm still getting used to that whole thing. I would say we've only done concerts for the community because it was kind of just the way it happened, and I'm only been with the organization for about a year now, so it kind of all kind of happened really quickly, and then the pandemic, of course, shut everything down. So we've been running fully virtual this whole season, and I think we're in our 3rd session now, so going since September. So I've honestly been with the kids more virtually than in person, unfortunately. But so I'm looking forward to getting back to kind of our next steps and rebuilding.
Yeah. And, Lisa, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Do you want to unmute yourself and maybe answer some of these questions we've been asking here about the symphony and performances and whatnot, or whatever you want to tell us? And Lisa, I apologize. You're the president and the chairman of the board. Is that your position?
I'm the chairman of the board now.
Yeah.
I was the president. Sandra Schultz is now our president, but I'm the chairman.
Oh, you're the chairman of the board. Okay, good. So, but it sounds like you've got a lot of the knowledge. So maybe you could enlighten us.
I think they give me more credit than I really deserve. It's certainly a team effort, but I can answer a few of those questions. So the symphony started in 1993, thanks to the tireless work of our founder, Jeanette Bonocci, who was a fine trumpet player, and she started the organization. So we've been around now for 28 years. So we have quite a history here in the desert. And our youth symphonies were started in 1997 with the Buddy Rogers Youth Symphony. And then James is correct. A few years ago, we added a second beginning symphony, the Buddy Rogers String Orchestra. So for musicians who have never picked up an instrument, as James said, the Buddy Rogers Youth Symphony, I'm a doctor, I've been seeing patients all day, not patients, musicians do need some experience to be in the Buddy Rogers Youth Symphony. But we wanted an organization that could take brand new musicians, because that's very important to be able to train beginning young musicians. And so we wanted something for everyone. So the Buddy Rogers String Orchestra may be musicians who have never touched an instrument. And that's what James was talking about. One of the barriers sometimes to that is the cost of an instrument. So we received a grant to purchase instruments, which we actually do not rent to the students. We give them to the students. They check them out like loaning a book from a library, and they have free use of all of those instruments for the time that they're with our organization. So, and we've let those students keep those instruments throughout the pandemic. So they've been rehearsing at home.
Oh, good. And just one other final question that I have. And just to everybody here, I don't see any questions in chat. Nobody has any questions? Put your questions into chat. So what is the students, is it the boundary, the Coachella Valley, or where do these students come from?
Throughout the Coachella Valley. And we really, in fact, we'd love to get the word out even more. I'm always surprised that having been here for 28 years, some people still don't know we exist. So anything you can do to jump up and down and make people aware that we're here, we would love that. We've also been in the schools. We have a teacher who goes into several of the schools and teaches some beginning strings programs through the school system. And all of our programs feed into each other. Now the beginning strings orchestra or the beginning strings program after school, or the Buddy Rogers String Orchestra, those feed into the Buddy Rogers Youth Symphony. When they outgrow the Buddy Rogers Youth Symphony, when appropriate, we put those students into our adult orchestra. And really, there's no other organization in the Valley that grows musicians through a course like that, to start at 6 or 8 years old, and then at 15 or 16 to put them in a full-on professional quality adult orchestra and mentor them not only in a teacher student, but side by side with a musician.
That's terrific. And you're right. My knowledge agrees with yours. I mean, there's no other organization that goes soup to nuts like that. That's really terrific. And I'm just listening to this. As soon as we go back, to in-person events, we'd like to have you guys back and do something in person with you. And Lisa, we're doing it now. We're promoting the Youth Symphony now to I don't know how many people are on now. Almost 60 people are on here now. So a number of them are already familiar with it, but I'm sure some of them have now. Now here we've got a question. All right, maybe you've answered this. What are the requirements, age or other, to start in the Buddy Rogers String Orchestra? And do they get to pick their instrument?
So as long as they can hold an instrument and pay attention, I think we'll give them a chance. So really we have, I think probably the youngest, I'm sorry, Jason's not on, probably maybe 7 or 8. But if we had a child younger than that who could hold an instrument and pay attention and play, we would absolutely give them the chance. So that's it. And they do not need any experience with that instrument or with an orchestra. It's best if they can read music, of course, but we'll teach them part of that too. And I know it's going to come up later. Well, I hope it comes up later. Erin, who will play, started in our organization when she was 8 in the Buddy Rogers Youth Symphony, then transitioned into the adult orchestra. And then in really what I consider a very full circle moment, she began mentoring the very beginning musicians in this Buddy Rogers String Orchestra. He would come in, allow them to come an hour early, and they could work one-on-one with these student teachers before they began to have their orchestra rehearsal. So I think that's really full circle, not only mentoring musicians, but mentoring teachers. I love that.
No, that's special. That's special for sure. Here's another question that came to me. When does enrollment open? I guess that's for auditions. I assume that the question is.
We're in the middle of our season right now, but if they're interested, tell them to send us an email or reach out to us. I think the best number would probably be the 327-2222 number, which is our symphony number. You'll get David Blanke on that phone, or send us an email and we'll reach out and give you information. Yep, there's Jeff, 760-327-2222. So give David Blanke a call and we'll get right back with you. I don't know that we're open to adding musicians right now in the middle of our year, but we're, this year it will be over before you know it, and we'll be starting a brand new year in the fall. We generally start in September.
Yeah, great, Linda. Or at least I'm glad you're here with us, and good to meet you virtually. And I look forward to meeting you in person soon.
Yeah,
and we'll move on. And if there's any other questions, put them in the chat. And now we're going to move on to our headliner, Erin Shen, and her bio is in the announcement that was sent to you. But I'll read some of it. Went to Palm Desert High School and is at UC San Diego, majoring in nanoengineering, and we got questions about that. But before we do that, I think James has a clip that features you. So why don't we? And does it maybe James or Erin? Do you want to describe what's going to happen here? What this clip is about?
Hi everyone. Thank you so much for coming. And yeah, I have a clip from a trio that I did with some of the other student mentors who are part of the Buddy Rogers beginning strings program. And it's a trio, and we play, it's an arrangement of The Mission and How Great Thou Art.
Wow, that was terrific. Was there a special meaning to that piece for you, or what did that mean to you?
Well, the piece is arranged by a group called the Piano Guys, who are famous on YouTube for they typically take a classical piece and they arrange it with a more contemporary piece. So in this case, they combined How Great Thou Art with Gabriel's oboe from the Mission. And luckily, Elizabeth, who is the pianist in the clip, and we were able to perform at the Piano Guys, I think January of 2020, so right before the pandemic. And so we played that piece in kind of in memory of being able to perform with them, and we love the group. And so,
Yeah. Well, I've got a million questions for you, so I hope everybody's ready to stay here till 7 o'clock. But so you were 8 when you joined Buddy Rogers, and concertmaster, soloist. What would you tell somebody who's on with us today? How has Buddy Rogers impacted your life here to this point?
yeah. Well, as you were saying that, and also Dr. Lindley was saying, I realized that I'm 18 right now, and so I've been in this program for a decade,
Wow.
which is over half my lifetime. And I just realized that. But anyway, I would say that leadership and confidence are probably the two biggest things that I've gotten out of this program. I remember when I was asked to be concertmaster of Bryce, I think this must have been 4 or 5 years ago. I remember telling the director at the time that I didn't think that I was qualified, and I thought that there were other better people suited for this role. And I remember he basically told me that his decision was final and that I had to step up. And I think he was incredibly patient and put a lot of trust in me to be able to step up into this role. And he also gave me the space and time to be able to take ownership of the role for myself, which I think gave me a lot of confidence moving forward as I was invited into the Coachella Valley Symphony. And I remember when I was invited, I was in the same sort of mental block of like, I don't deserve to be in this room of all these professionals or all these incredible musicians. But when you're surrounded by such a supportive community of people and people who give you tips and tricks, and they don't, see you as less than, and they see you just as one of them and someone who's eager to learn, you start to believe in yourself too. And I think that's the biggest impact that I've gotten from Bryce.
Oh, that's terrific. And I've got to ask about the violin. Well, I'll ask about the violin you're currently using, but like I was asking James, was it always the violin for you? Did you have any other instruments growing up? And how did the violin come to you?
I think it's a combination of the violin came to me, but then eventually I chose the violin. So I originally started on piano, and my brother and I were put in piano lessons together. And I know I see some familiar faces, but if you don't know my brother and we are extremely competitive. So we would run home from school and we would like race to see who got to the piano first, and then we'd fight over who could practice for how long. And I think my mom got really tired of that. And so at my elementary school, one of the Bryce outreach programs at the elementary school happened to be at my elementary school. And my mom thought it was a good idea because my dad had played violin when he was younger. So she decided to put us in violin lessons at our elementary school through Bryce. And that's how I got started with violin. And then I think probably like end of middle school, early high school is when I started to take ownership of violin, and I started to really become passionate about it. And I think my brother started leaning towards piano, and so that's when we split. But we still overlap, and he still plays violin and I still play piano. So
do you talk to him?
we actually go to school together, so I can't escape.
And so now you're mentoring the youth symphony students. What is that like? How is that?
It's exciting, especially when obviously when it's in person. I think when I first started, I guess I was kind of naive because I didn't really think it was that different. I had never taught before. I'd never been in a teaching position. And so I was like, oh, I have so many years of experience. Like this, I can teach them how to hold a bow. I can teach them how to play a scale. But they always surprise me. They're always doing new things that I would never think of. And I think it's interesting, and really I'm honored to be a part of the beginning of their musical journey. And I'm excited to see where they go.
And so what words of wisdom do you give them? I mean, if there's a student that's struggling and they're thinking of throwing in the towel and this is too tough for me, and I mean, what inspiration can you share with them, or how do you keep them engaged and committed?
Well, first and foremost, I always try and have fun. So if I notice that, maybe someone's having a bad day, maybe they're just getting frustrated, I think it's more important that you keep a positive mindset and you don't, start to negate negative emotions towards music or your instrument. But I think, if I could tell my students anything, I really hope that, I hope music isn't just something that they do for a hobby or like because their parents tell them to. I hope that music becomes a part of who they are. And I don't know how to get that across, but that's my ultimate goal. And I would tell that to any of my students.
And so I'm going to reverse the question. What are you now? You're teaching them or you're mentoring them. So what are you getting from them? What are you getting out of this from them?
I get a lot, but I'd say the biggest thing for me is watching them hit all of their milestones. Because, if you do something for so many years, all these little achievements don't really mean anything. But when you're experiencing them for the first time, it's like everything is a milestone. And so getting to kind of watch them hit those milestones and to kind of relive those moments vicariously through my students and kind of realize like, wow, like I was in their shoes so many years ago. I don't remember, but kind of being able to relive and also watch them go through their own milestones, I think has been the biggest thing I've gotten from them.
Well, that's great. And so nano engineering, I mean, you got to tell us about this. I mean, how does a violinist and concert master and youth music mentor get to study nano engineering?
Yeah. Well, I've always been interested in science and technology. But I think nano engineering was kind of a gamble because I think if I think back to myself in high school when I was picking majors, nano engineering was just a random lottery, see if I can get in, not really thinking a lot about actually pursuing nano engineering. And then once I got into UCSD, I started exploring nano engineering a lot more, and I realized I've kind of figured out what it is. I mean, I still don't know 100% what nano engineering is, but it was just kind of a gamble.
So is music, I mean, are 5 years from now or 10 years from now, what are we going to see you doing? What are you going to be doing? Will we see you on a stage, or will you see you at a research lab, or where will we see you?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't even know, but hopefully it'll be either research or I'm interested in not necessarily medical school, but I'm interested in nanomedicine. So I don't really know where that will take me, but I definitely hope to continue to pursue music, even, if it's just practicing on my own or if that's being part of a community group, but I'm not sure where the future will take me, but that's,
let's see. Well, let's stick with it. And, in Los Angeles, they have a doctor's symphony. So, there's a lot of professional people who played instruments and were in orchestras that went on to different careers, but yet they still have their finger or their bow, in your case, in the music world. So, well, I have to thank the three of you. I feel like this has been a masterclass. This has been like a real education, just in terms of your backgrounds and what you've achieved and how you've dealt with people. throughout your career, people you've worked with, so on and so forth. And I just have one final question for, I guess, all three of you. And you could answer it however you want, or not even answer it. But listen, we've gone through a horrible year here, all of us. Fortunately, here we are. Everybody that's here today is alive. Hopefully, everybody's well. And we've all known people who haven't done so well here. But in the midst of all of this, there's always a silver lining. There's something that you learn, or every time I'm challenged, I learn something. I grow. I know that personally. And I look at our organization, the Affiliates in the Desert. We never intended to do Zoom. Zoom was not even in the cards when we formed our organization. This has been terrific for us. When we go back to in-home salons and luncheons and stuff like that, we're going to continue to still do Zooms. This is absolutely terrific. So if I had to point to a silver lining for our group, the Affiliates in the Desert, it's probably been Zoom. We didn't anticipate it, and here we are. But so maybe, I don't know, John, James, Erin, I mean, tell us about a silver lining that has occurred for you or your organization, or whatever you'd like to talk about.
I'll go.
Okay.
I think I always, people have asked me that a couple times in the recent months as we start, coming, things are starting to move again. And I always am very careful to say too much, because I know it is it has been so difficult for so many people. And like, we are saying this under the guise of we're counting our blessings. We're very fortunate. I feel extremely fortunate in my personal life and everything that has happened. I want to say that. So like, thank you for bringing this up. I think it's important to also, even though there's negativity, be positive. And I think for me, it's honestly, I got to realize that I was doing things, I was doing too much, right? I think there was this moment, and I reflected on this with some other friends and colleagues, of there was this moment right before, it was around January or so, right before the pandemic kind of hit. And it was like, it was so busy. Everyone was like, and that was always the answer when we see people like, how are you doing? Oh, I'm busy, right? Oh, I'm busy. It's crazy. I'm good. I'm busy, right? And then the pandemic hit, and then we stopped driving, and the skies clear up. And then the pandemic hit, and like, we're all forced to just stop. And there was this level of clarity, artistically, creatively, like personally, that was able to, not right away, it took maybe like 9 months, but like once I got able to deal with what all of this was existentially, there was a certain kind of clarity that came forward. I've been playing more piano because my percussion instruments are in storage, and I'm going to take lessons with John at some point if he is cool with that. We haven't spoken about that yet, but yeah, there's just been this different sort of like creative spark that has been occurring because of all the other sort of things that have been going on. And I think I wanted to say that because I know there's so many musicians out there that have been hurting and have been struggling. And I think if we can try to see it in that sort of way, or at least try to get to that level, we may come out better for it.
That's great. That's great, James. Erin, do you have something to say? I mean, there's some silver lining that you would like to talk about?
Yeah, I think kind of similar to James, I would say time. Yeah, I was in high school. I never really stopped to really enjoy the moments that I had. And, the pandemic hit kind of right when I was graduating high school. And so I got to kind of have time to reflect on everything that I did do in high school, and also just time to cherish, that chapter of my life, and closing that chapter and starting a new one. But I think in quarantine, I've become a lot more independent and self-motivated. Not saying that I wasn't before, but, I think for me, I cherish having concerts and gigs, but when you don't have those things, it's kind of hard to move forward and kind of figure out like, why am I doing this? Why am I practicing? And I definitely went through that phase. And so kind of learning how to be motivated for my own happiness and my own sake, I think was a silver lining that I would take.
Terrific. Glad to hear that. John, do you have anything to share with us?
Well, One of the things that happened, besides this orchestra, I'm associated with another orchestra in Temecula. Um, we lost people, and it wasn't to the virus, for various reasons, health reasons, old age, and it's very tragic. And where we're kind of cheated not being able to see those people before they passed on. Um, but it's not as if I didn't, we weren't grateful to have those people in our lives, but we realized how important they were to us when they passed on, and how important it is to be grateful for the normal things, when whatever normal is. But whatever your normal state of life is, you have a roof over your head, you have food on the table, you see people, you have friends, you have family, and those people are all so very, very important to you. And that for me is the silver lining. We can be busy with our jobs and all of that, but that's not who we are. Or, our essence is what we're here on earth for, to make the world a better place and to interact with other people who are special to us.
Terrific. Be grateful in the moment, uh, and often. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, this has been great. I mean, do any of the three of you have anything else to say before we close out here?
Actually, I do.
Yes.
I was thinking, as everybody was talking about the youth symphony and the adult symphony, there are things that happen. Now, Erin, I don't know if we were clear on this, but Erin also plays in the adult symphony, right? Well, you mentioned that in passing, right? You're in the first violin section, right? Do we know offhand how many people from the youth symphony come to play in the adult symphony as regular members of the adult symphony? Do we know offhand? Cindy knows. She's in the room.
So thank you.
We have some violin teachers in other members of. Oh, Lisa.
I believe we had about 7.
Okay, so
Large number. So it was 10%. It's more than 10% of our orchestra.
right. So
Wow.
see, here's the thing: right when we started lockdown, we were at our apex. The youth symphony was about to explode. The adult symphony was bursting at the seams with members. We were doing all kinds of things. And one of the things that we would have loved to get off the ground would be a side by side where the youth symphony gets to play and mingle with the adult symphony during one of the concerts and play a big piece with us. But besides that, we bring people from the youth symphony, the high achievers from the youth symphony get to play in the adult symphony. And it's kind of a baptism by fire at the beginning. At first they're a little bit overwhelmed, but the way it works is, after a while, if you survive that first couple of weeks, before you know it, wow, you're thinking, wow, I can hold my own in this symphony. And that's another way of bringing forth the future leaders of our organizations.
That's terrific. Really terrific. That, and it's great that you've got that progression. I mean, so somebody coming in at 8 years old, if they're really into it and have the passion, they could see that progression. They know what the road looks like in front of them. That's a good thing to show somebody.
I can also piggyback off of that, saying
Sure.
in the sense that I feel like with what we have here is extremely unique as far as other organizations I've been with or seen, in that, like, for example, Erin, starting at 8 years old, went through the Bryce program, moved up to the adult symphony, right? It's not even just that, and now she's mentoring, of course, the younger kids again. But it's not even just that. It's like the way I've started in the organization, which is a far longer story than we have time for, but it's a good one. Come back for the next one. Is I started playing in the percussion section, and then through a lot of other ways started conducting, and then started conducting the youth orchestra. So it's like it's a thing, like, if you start in the string orchestra as a youth, you have a connection all the way to the music director of the adult orchestra because of the way it is built. And that is something that I don't think a lot of groups have, which allows for all these things that John and Erin were talking about to happen. And I think that's extremely unique about our organization. I'm very proud to be a part of it.
Yeah, you should be. And I'm really glad we did this today. You're right. There's no other organization like you guys in the Valley that does this soup to nuts and the outreach and instruments, that whole thing, Lisa, with the instruments that you mentioned. I mean, that in and of itself is terrific, to be able to get instruments for these kids who in many cases, maybe most cases, can't afford them. So to make sure that they've got that. So, all right, well, it's after 6. I promised we would close at 6, so we've gone beyond that. So in chat, 2 little sales pitches here. For our organization, the Affiliates in the Desert, I see Ricardo's put our website up there, affiliatesinthedesert.org. Find out more about us. We'd love to have you join us. The membership requirements are minimal. The annual membership fee is not a lot. You get to participate with us and help in our outreach to organizations like this and other organizations in the Valley. So that's sales pitch number 1. I see Jeff has been doing a great job here at putting the link in there to donate to the Buddy Rogers Youth Symphony and the Coachella Valley Symphony. So that link is in there too. And again, the invitation you received to come to this event has those links in it. So if you don't go to chat or you forget about it, and later on tonight or tomorrow you say, oh God, I'd like to donate to those guys. How do I do that? Certainly go to their website, but you can go back to that invitation and find out how to do that. So I'm going to thank everybody now. But James has a closing piece for us. So I'm going to thank everybody. We're going to say goodbye. James.
And I guess I can set up the last piece. This is Rachmaninoff, correct? Okay.
Yes.
So we covered a whole bunch of things, but did we mention that we also have concerto competition? So besides the youth orchestra, this was back when we were associated with the Steinway Society, and we featured 3 winners from in our concerto competition from the Steinways. But we now have our own concerto competition, and when we do get back to regular business, we have a concerto competition and we feature the winners to get to play with the orchestra. So this is the finale to the Rachmaninoff second piano concerto, right near the end where it ends in C major. And the soloist at the time is Marie Ananian, who was one of the Steinway winners.
Okay, so James, before you put it on, just I do, because we're gonna say goodbye now, and he's gonna put that on, and that'll be it. But I want to thank everybody for attending. John, James, and Erin, and Lisa. Lisa became part of the program here. Thank you all. This has been absolutely terrific. I really feel like this was a master class. I learned so much today, just about not only your organization, but just how things work, how somebody progresses along the way here. So enough with that. So James, why don't you play us out?
Sounds good.
Again, thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thanks for having us, Mike.
Okay, terrific. You guys were terrific. It couldn't have been better.
That was wonderful.
Thank you,
Thank you so
everybody.
much.
Yeah. Well, thank you all. And those that haven't been vaccinated, get vaccinated. I assume, hopefully everybody out here has been vaccinated. It may be a requirement to go to a concert. Well, Disney Concert Hall, they're talking about that. So you may need that to attend a concert.
Great
Okay.
job. It was really great to see everybody. Erin, you were wonderful.
Oh, thank you so much.
John and James are wonderful too, but Erin, you were Thanks.
Okay, we're going to close it out. Bye, everyone.